Good morning, April. This
Good morning.
is April 2019 from the news desk
At PSC.
at PSC. Yes, it's windy out, so don't judge. I didn't get to look in the mirror before we started, so here we go. How are you all? Today's topic is really something special, and on the heels of March Madness, we're gonna use sports. I hope that people don't get mad when we do, and even if you're not a sports fan, you'll be able to relate to what we're talking about, right? Are you excited about this topic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I love it.
Yeah.
And being from the old school.
Who, you or me?
Me.
I'm not from the old school.
I'm from the old
I'm
school.
very hip and current.
Playing sports and cheering for years, and I ran track and played softball. Coaches were absolutely direct when we were growing up. I mean, you didn't take anything personal. I don't remember anyone saying, "Well, they yelled at me." I never saw any of that growing up. The only things I would hear is hustle, come on, let's go, what are you doing? Get your head out of your behind and let's get going, right?
Yeah.
We didn't take things personally. And now everything is taken personally, everything. And it's hard to ask for more in fear of the responses. I was in front of a salon this week, and it was a big salon, probably a staff of 25 hairdressers. And one of their things they talked about is we take everything personally, everything, and it's a huge distraction for us. And I can't relate to it because I don't. It's not how we were raised. So it's completely different.
Well, and it's something that we say a lot in our classes is that most people think they want a coach, but in reality what they want is a cheerleader. They want somebody who's only going to deliver roses and candy and positive, not actually help you to improve and to get better. And I think using the March Madness as just some examples. You look at the Auburn coach, and he literally is coaching every single minute
at the top
game.
of his voice.
He's working it. He's
working
working with his players. He's communicating with his players. He's bringing out the best. He's not just cheering them on. He's directing. He's helping to improve
And shifting and whatever. This so nice touch.
And I think of the Michigan State coach, Tom Izzo, who got criticized early on in the tournament because he called out one of his players, a freshman, one of his players. And it was a social media frenzy. Everybody talking about how could Tom Izzo do that, and that's old school coaching, and that's not the way. It's not the way to reach. And the player came out as a freshman, came out in public after all this criticism, right? And he said, "Hey, that's what I signed up for.
Yeah, you're gonna play
That's what I signed up for. I absolutely know that." He said, "Coach Izzo gets all over me even more than that in practice, but I want to become the best, and I know that that's what it takes." Now, there's very few people, certainly.
An 18-year-old saying that? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you look at the other 18-year-olds that impacted the tournament, most notably the three from Duke. And there was nothing that suppressed the smile on Zion Williamson's face. He loves the game and loves every part of it, the coaching and the cheering and the cheerleading.
And the practices. Yeah,
he's the same person in every aspect of the game. And so how do we get like that in our businesses and in salons and in companies? Because it's not that way by and large. People want cheerleaders more than they want coaches.
But isn't there an arrogance on someone who doesn't think they have to be coached?
No, I just think.
I think so.
I don't think it's an arrogance. I think it's social. It's the way that people have been raised. You hear it all the time, but it does go back to everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah.
Everybody's the best. Everybody, they get the party at the end of the season. It's just the way that things have changed. And I know the cycle will go backwards because it always does.
It does repeat itself.
It'll start over again, and we'll have more demonstrative coaching, and we'll have people that are raised under very strict standards and called to be their best. And then we're going to eventually wind up with a lot of this current generation getting to a certain age where now it's time to perform.
And they don't know how.
and they don't know what they missed.
Yeah.
And they'll have to be called to another level of accountability.
I mean, if you think about even just the word hustle, bring it up a notch. Here we go. What's going on? Why don't you look like you're having a good time? Love the game. And someone could pout over that? I just don't understand.
Well, it's what right now is eliminating people from going further.
Yeah, you're getting dismissed.
There are coaches that I can think of one example of a local coach that if you make a mistake, he pulls you out of the game. And depending on how those players respond,
it's going to be the outcome.
It's going to be the outcome of whether they can go to the next level or not.
Mm-hmm.
And many won't go to the next level. You see, there's one thing about, I think, about life and about sports. I always told my kids, make a sport tell you you can't play it anymore. Make a sport tell you that you can't. And for some, it's when they go from Little League to Pony League and they start throwing a curveball and they can't for the life of them hit a curveball. It's another that they get to another level, maybe high school baseball, and their nerves get the best of them in the field or in the batter's box. And all of a sudden now that's that game saying that the game, the stimulus, and my inner makeup doesn't allow me to go further. Well, isn't that really true
in salons?
In salons as well.
Oh gosh, yes. It's the same formula. Exactly. Okay.
So game face.
Game face. So when you look at game face, and it's a facial expression that suggests a strong determination to succeed. It's that mean it face, not I don't want to be here. It's and I love this when I looked it up, and I thought, yeah, it's the mental attitude, the intense determination, and the outward appearance. I mean, I look at some people and think, God, you're playing baseball. You're playing basketball.
Well, take it to a different level. You love the TV show called The Voice.
Yes.
There's a game face in The Voice.
And I'll say to him, that girl can sing, but she's not telling a good story with her body language. She's not contagious that way.
It has to do with presence.
So it's absolutely, and you're going to see that in our next slides. And so when they do in the blind audition, they're turning around for the voice, mm-hmm. and they don't move on because of the outward package.
And you're not talking about, are they perfectly physically fit, or are they
I'm not talking about
magazine beautiful.
No.
You're talking about presence.
Yeah. Absolute presence of singing and having an audience.
Same presence.
Yeah, and having the audience relate to them and the audience wanting to connect with them and saying, gosh, I can't take my eyes off of her. She is magnetic. And that's what happens in the salon industry too. We're not talking about, and I'm kind of going ahead of our slides right now, but we're not talking about technical ability. Technical ability is, can you sing?
Mm-hmm.
Technical ability is, can you sing? And then, so the blind audition is yeah, technically, she's superb. Her attitude, her intense determination, her outward appearance, not so much. And that's the game face we're talking about today. The game of hairdressing, the game of business. You have to be all in that regard. And that's what we're talking about today. And so I want you to start spending some money and spending some time on this area of the business, because I can tell you, behind closed doors, this is where we're losing the battle. It's this. It's the game face side of the business. Okay, so let's enter. And this is where we talk about presence. It's that swagger, right? My mom used to call it when I'd walk in a room. She'd say, I didn't see that Miss America walk today. And I knew what she meant. Get those shoulders back. Make sure you're making eye contact, looking around and connecting mm-hmm. with people. And you're about to tackle something really difficult during this challenge, because you have to connect and have presence with the community. It's kind of like that Miss America walk that my mom used to say to me. And she started saying that when I was 10 years old, right? And when she would have me go door to door, make sure you walk up to the door with confidence and knock on there and ask for a donation to the Red Cross or whatever. And some people walk in a room and they blend in. They just evaporate. It doesn't matter if they can cut hair if they don't know how to have that presence, that stage presence of hairdressing in the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the game face also says, hey, we're ready. Let's go. Let's go today. And you can tell the people that are ready and leaning in and have that. And you can tell the people that aren't. The voice is the best example. You say to me, what do you think of this girl? She's not telling the story with her eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not magnetic. Okay. So fired up, ready to go, and tell your face. And I was listening to President Obama, a couple. He was on, and I was looking at fired up as a look up, just thinking, can I find something that's going to bring an emotion? And he said he was at a speech one time. A lady in the community, everywhere she went, she would say, fired up. People go, fired up, ready to go, ready to go. And she was known for these two things.
Mm-hmm.
And she was probably in her 70s or 80s. And he said, by gosh, at first you go, what's that? Fired up, ready to go, fired up, ready to go, fired up, ready to go, fired up. And then all of a sudden he said, no, I'm fired up. I'm fired up, and I'm ready to go. And then I start saying to my staff, fired up, and they say, fired up. And it's contagious. And someone's got to sometimes say, hey, bring it up a notch. Bring it up. Even when we're in our directors' meetings here, and I see them all, and I've used this example before, I have to say to them, come on, guys, bring your energy up. I mean, we're working on business, and no one's given us anything contagious to be able to get involved here. So tell your face, tell your body, tell your face. So the eye test, I like this. Who has their game face on and who's drawing the attention to the onlooker. I mean, when we walk in, even if I go to a dance competition or watch something on TV, your eye is drawn to someone for a reason.
Everywhere you go.
Everywhere.
Anywhere you're
You
in
can
a
go to
room
Jewel
of,
and
if you're in a
check
room
out.
of 5 people, there's going to be someone that stands out differently than the other 4.
But it's taught. It's not something that's an automatic. And I know cheering for 11 years made a big difference for me because it brings out, I mean, if you can cheer and be in front of a student body or a community, you gain a confidence. There's something special about that. But you could also be a cheerleader that no one even knows you cheered. 15 years later, they say, you're a cheerleader because you didn't make an impression. So it's not just doing it and becoming it, it's making an impression on someone. One of the things I said to you, one person can change the energy of a game or the salon. When we were watching Zion play, and this is the first time when he's a freshman and a true freshman at that, and playing for Duke, I told Steve, I can't take my eyes off him.
That's true. I couldn't either.
The other person, and I look for him on the court, and of course he'd get the rebound. I look for him on the court, of course he'd get the pass and the dunk and the assist, and Michael Jordan was another person. Couldn't take my eyes off him. And isn't it funny that when Michael stopped playing the game, people stopped watching basketball? You're drawn to energy. You're drawn to that game face. And Zion has that magic. I'm not surprised he's going in the draft because he's going to bring an element of energy back to the game. Now, that's a lot resting on an 18-year-old, but he loves it so much. He loves it, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves it. And we had a ball watching him.
Well,
Not only because
I to see the season end.
and I think that even if you weren't a Duke fan, we would have probably found him because of the conversation about him. We would have found it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was everywhere. Everyone talking about this young man. And he was Player of the Year.
Yeah. And everybody's book.
Everybody's.
Now, what's interesting is that once they were out of the tournament, there were other people who could shine and who did shine amongst their teams. And that was exciting too. So there's generational talent, and then there is game-based presence.
Well, there's also situational talent.
And this is learned, it's adapted, it's discipline, it's habit.
Oh, it's habit. And it's absolute the effort that went in behind the scenes that allows you to shine in this capacity. I remember the conversation that Steve Kerr had about Michael Jordan saying, there's players in the NBA that, tonight I'm just a little tired and I'm going to pull back a little bit. They weren't full out. And when people asked him, and they still ask him to this day what it was like playing with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said not only was he never
took a game off, never took a possession off,
never took a practice off. He was full out and had that intensity his whole life. That was his reputation. What a wonderful hat. And he was meant to play basketball. And in this example, she was meant to be a hairdresser. All cylinders go. And you have to hold your team accountable for the environment that you create, that you can live in that. Michael raised the game of everybody because he needed to be able to have his game be that good.
And, I think the only thing that, a challenge that I guess I would put out there to everyone is that we know sports heroes, so to speak. We know the exceptional athletes in every sport, because they're in front of us all the time. They're on the news. They're on the top 10 plays. They're talked about on the radio. They're pictured in the magazines. Their personal life becomes interest because their professional life is so good. And I want to say that there's hairdressers in our industry that are every bit as exceptional.
In these salons that are watching today.
And they're in your salons, but we don't know as much about them. Robert Cromie says all the time that it's not about being remembered, it's about never being forgotten. There's a difference in that. What would you have to do to never be forgotten? How many of you know who Diana Schmidtke is? How many of you know who Jason Snyderman is? How many of you know who Chris McMillan is? These are some of our hair industry heroes that we're not studying. We're not trying to emulate them. We're letting Insta-famous people. Now, sometimes those people are also famous on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But what if they're not? Instagram isn't a study place. It's a place to be inspired. You look at their work and you're inspired. But how are we going to study some of these people? I mean, I just listened to a hairdresser talk about how they're probably alive today because their paths crossed with Chris McMillan. And I thought, you know what? I don't know enough about Chris McMillan. Some of you probably know instantly that he's Jennifer Aniston's hairdresser. Yeah. But beyond that, how much do you know? So I just want to challenge and say that if we want to always have our game face on, how much do we know really about our own industry's history? I've been telling stories a lot over the last couple of years about history in our industry, going back as far as I can go and beyond from what stories were passed on by folklore from my father and grandfather. But I want to say we've got to protect that. We've got to protect that. It's your industry. It's your profession. How much do we know? I do subscribe to a Facebook group called Old School Sassoon, and my friend Dennis Daturi and another gentleman keep that alive. And I love when people put an old picture of Vidal and a couple of other hairdressers and say, who are these people? Can you name them? And then people say, well, it's this one or it's that one. And some are right and right on, and some aren't. But it creates such I just love it. I got to tell you, I really enjoy that group because it's a lot of people that I hold as industry heroes. And thanks, Dennis, for keeping that going and active and moving along. So the eye test, as Terry said, it takes place whether we know it or not. I mean, they say that people make a judgment within the first 7 seconds of entering a room, of meeting a person. And how do you do on that first 7 seconds? Are you going to never be forgotten after that first 7 seconds? Or are you going to blend in? Now, interestingly enough, when I heard this interview for Hairdresser to the Stars, they said that one of their innate talents was the ability to blend in when it was time. he said that he had the ability to be a chameleon. He could be just as at home with a group of heavy metal artists as he could with a group of professional athletes, as he could with an actor. But he said, you got to know when to turn your personality up and when to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was terrific advice. He said, you got to be able to read the room. And we talk about that a lot. We talk about scan rate. What do you see? What do you respond to? I mean, please don't think that when we talk about game face, it means in your face all the time. Energy level at a 10 all the time.
No, it doesn't.
It's not. Game face just says, I know the game is on, and I'm going to bring my best.
And this is my role
and you can count on it.
Yeah.
Every time in every situation.
Yep.
So
good. I enjoyed that very much. This is a slide we used last time, and I thought, ooh, it's good. I'm going to put it in again. And it's just talking about the comfort zone levels. When you're comfortable, you know, it feels safe and in control, and fear zone and learning zone and growing zone. And this kind of goes with game face too. You know, oh God, I hate walking in, and I hate having to go up and saying hi and introducing myself, right? Some people are better with the scissors in their hand, right, than going up and greeting someone in the front of the house. Or I don't like talking about take home, but I do like being in the chair. All of that falls into these 4 levels. Mm-hmm. Which one are you? And you know, and some people have to wait to be everything be perfect for them to do what they need to do. And it's leaning in, and kind of goes with this. We're not losing the salon in the technical game. We're losing in the mental game. The mental confidence, presence, attitude, energy, urgency. That's where we're losing it. I mean, some people, I dismiss themselves of opportunity. I don't want that walk in. Can I go home? You know, their reputation in the salon is that they don't want to be there, mm-hmm. right? And you know, you think about Michael Jordan. He loved the game so much. The love of the game clause was, if he ever wants to play basketball 24/7, he's allowed to do it.
Anywhere, anytime.
And can you see him saying, "I don't want to be on the court," right? But we've got people that walk in, and that was his job too. It's not as if he's just playing a game, but his job was to represent the game of basketball in his eyes. And they're losing the mental game that it takes to be tough, to be noticed, to stand out. That's where we're losing it. And, you know, I think about young athletes that are trying to be something. Well, if you pout or you show your anger or your disgust with a coach, they're going to cross you off the list.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not coachable. Not going to spend my time here, right? And, you know, I always say to young athletes, I don't think your talent's in question. I think it's your mental capacities in question right now. And I see that in hairdressers. It's not the talent.
And it's at every level.
Every level. You know, you could have a hairdresser that gets to a certain level. You know, I was giving you this example yesterday, and I hope I can say it the right way. There's times when people think they outgrow their role or outgrow responsibility. For example, let's say I'm an owner now, and I don't think I have to clean a powder room. Well, that's not the case. You know, I service it every time I'm in there. But there's people that get to a certain part in their lives that, and I see this in hairdressing. I'm a level 3 hairdresser now, so I shouldn't have to sweep, right? You get to a point where you dismiss your role, that 2 minutes of your time could still make a big difference for somebody, right? And I think that can happen in sports. It can happen definitely in business, and we're giving you that example in a salon. When you've got people that think they outgrow, the jobs in the business, then they've gotten too big for their britches, right? Mentally. Technically, they're growing, but mentally, they're helping us lose the game, not win the game. So I think that's really important. There's never a job, regardless of how silly it sounds, that every level can't perform and make a difference. And usually, when it's positioned correctly, it creates such a level of respect, right? I know when the staff sees me in the powder and cleaning, many times they'll go, "Hey, I got this." I go, "No, I've got this." No, and they want to protect me from doing it. No, I'm just fine. So it's the same thing, right? And it gains a level of respect. Okay. The chatter that people that have game face, love the game, is put me in, give me the ball, right? And the chatter of someone that wants to be in the game in the salon is, "I'll take that next guest. Let me have them," right? And I think of Christine at Visible Changes, right? And I think we've used this example before, but she's the highest level at Visible Changes, and I had lunch with her. And John always makes sure that when we're down there, that we have lunch or have time with people that we can learn from. And so I was having lunch with her, and she said, "Let me give you an example of the difference between me now being with Visible Changes." How many years? I don't even know. She's got to be 20-some years, I would
Probably,
think.
yeah.
And or maybe even more. And someone brand new coming in or trying to grow, or maybe they've just gotten to level 2 or 3 and they think that they've arrived. She had an example this day where she came in at 12 o'clock for extensions that she was going to do. That was a $2,500 ticket or something. And when she walked in, they said, "Your extension's canceled." All right. What would happen with most people, she said? First of all, they'd start complaining about it.
And
they'd walk out.
They'd go do something else.
Absolutely. And she said, "Hey, I'm here. Put me on the book. I'm here. I was planning to be here anyway. Open me up." And they're in mall locations, so they do have a lot of traffic. It's the mental capacity. And so she said, "Let me in." They said, "Well, you're the highest level." She said, "I don't care what level you charge the customer. Put me in."
I think she said, "Put me in at the lowest price."
Put me in the lowest price. So she goes in, and now, and 4 hours later, she does $1,700. Mental capacity. No excuses. Just let me see what I can do. And she looks at it as a challenge. And that's the difference. She has such a game face, right?
Absolutely.
The little thing, 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing, right? It's cutest.
You know, I just heard, again, this person in an interview, and they talked about the fact that when he wakes up in the morning, he said his mind starts going right off the bat, just starts going. And he said that the first thing that it starts going on is about self. What will my day be like? What will I do? What will I do?
Is this Eric?
No, this is...
Oh, okay. Because that's what Eric and I
Jason.
were talking about.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, and with that brought anxiety. And what he had to learn to do was flip it around. Get out of thinking about himself and get on to thinking about serving others. Mm. And it's what allowed him to defeat things like drug abuse and so on. You know, it's really amazing. Alcohol abuse, drug abuse, you know, being 34 years old and not knowing if he'd ever own a house or have a family. And what's happened in the last 14 years is amazing in his story, in our business. But the reality of it is that, isn't that so true? You know, if I think of one of our favorite authors, John Gordon, in The Carpenter, when he talks about love, serve, and care being the 3 tenets. And when you're thinking about self, you're not thinking about love, serve, and care. When you're thinking about others, that's who the game face is for. It results in you doing more, doing better, and so on. But it's about focusing on the other person and showing that love for people in general, serving them, having that servant's heart and that strong desire to serve at an extraordinary level, and showing a care factor that's second to none. Mm-hmm. Realizing that your role is creating a masterpiece. You're not just doing hair. It's going to have your signature on it.
Mm-hmm. Good. So, what is Emma saying when, even last night, I gave her, it was Taco Thursday at our house, and I gave her a taco, and she thought it was overflowed, right? And she goes, seriously, Mom? Seriously? Yes, seriously, figure it out. And this is seriously very important. It deserves attention. It deserves conversation in every staff meeting. And, you know, when you really understand your role, you respect it and you honor it and you mean it. You absolutely mean it. It's not half-hearted. It's absolutely full-hearted, and it's noticeable. So seriously, this game face is a very important category in my estimation.
Mm-hmm.
So standards of conduct. I mean, what is it? What are your standards? What are you known for? You know, what are you going to bring to the table? What are you going to work on? Because it's not just the salon standards, it's the standards of self. What are my standards of self? And this goes back to image, response. What are my standards of me? And what's it like to follow me? What's it like to work next to me? What's it like to prepare with me? What are my standards of conduct? And then you honor the craft. You know, I said this earlier, but for the love of the game, for the love of the craft, if you love hairdressers, I mean, some people you'll hear them say, my daughter's thinking about going to beauty school, tell her not to do it. I mean, can you imagine? Gosh, I think it's a contagious attitude. Game. You know, Michael, I was listening, and you're going to hear more about this, but I listened yesterday to Michael's acceptance speech when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2009, and I loved it. I laughed. I witnessed. There was times he put his game face on where he was going to teach a couple things from, and during the acceptance speech, he was still teaching and holding people accountable. During his acceptance speech, he has that high of a standard and that love of the game. It was amazing to me. But there's people that don't honor their craft like that. Mm-hmm. They resent it or they speak negatively about it, and that's something that gets in the way. You know, sometimes people say, "What's wrong with our salon?" That's what's wrong with your salon. You're not having a good time. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard, but when you get it right, the great performance outweighs any of the negative chatter that can be in place. Performance success is really a presence of mind. What can I accomplish today? You're in the moment, you're present tense, you know, and this is when I really think about people have to realize that the distractions that they have, that they can bring into the business, you know, you have to realize right when I walk in, it's game time. And how can I be in the presence right now? This last year, I've had some things happen to me in family where my mother had an accident, broke her hip, and we had some things going on with the children. And I'm telling you, I was not in present tense. My mind was wondering and I'm not a worrier, but it was a worry of I didn't know what to do. I was worried, thinking, wow, I can't believe that this is happening. How do I navigate this? And I wasn't in present tense and I wasn't in presence of mind. I don't know how else to say that. You witnessed it watching me.
You were distracted.
I was totally distracted.
Distractions take you out of present tense.
Exactly does. And I was quiet. How often am I quiet?
Well, and think about it. A term you hear all the time is distracted driving, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what does distracted driving do? It creates accidents.
Yeah.
In some cases, it can create death. Can being distracted in your personal or professional career bring about those same types of things? Yes, they can bring about accidents. They can bring about being off course. Have you ever been distracted while you're driving and all of a sudden you're passing your exit? It's happened to me. Where you pass your exit that you wanted to get off at. What does that mean?
Or
You're headed somewhere different.
But the arrogance of people thinking they can text and be the same driver, I can't get over that.
Well,
and I've been behind people texting and they're weaving and so on and so forth. It's dangerous.
Put that to the business.
Well, yeah.
If you got somebody cutting hair that's distracted, they're weaving in their career.
Absolutely.
They're running the risk.
And other people are watching it. And you know what? I mean, I call it in. When I get right on the phone and say, look, I either have a drunk driver in front of me or I have someone texting, but they're dangerous on the road right now. Someone needs to get involved. And so who's doing that in your businesses? Someone has to bring it to the forefront and not excuse it. Don't give permission for that to be okay. So when you look about success is all about execution. You know, what do we have control over? There's things we don't have control over. We don't have control when that guest is going to walk in the door. They could be late, right? Mm-hmm. But what do we have control over? We have control over the greeting. We have control over the consultation. If we're given professional recommendation, what we have control over the technical experience, the service we're doing, the experience the guest is enjoying, the close, doing the take-home rescheduling referrals. We have control over those things, yet people decide to leave these things out.
And the real danger is anytime you leave one of those things out and the guest still appears to be happy, you've made a new habit.
You think it's okay. Yeah.
You begin to think it's okay. And then you change the recipe and that got you where you need to go. And I just don't see that in many other craftsmen, in many other people that are
in all
masters.
fairness, you don't know. I mean, I don't know if a tailor leaves something out because we don't know a tailor. We don't know. I'm hoping they don't take shortcuts. I'm hoping if I go to the butcher, he's not taking a shortcut with our meal that we're going to have Thursday night. You know, you trust people to be a master at their craft. And that's like even when we've had things done at the house and we find out that, you know, the person that serviced the air conditioner or the furnace or someone said, the person before you didn't do a great job. I'm irritated immediately because I can't inspect their work, right? I'm not them. Just like a customer can't check your haircut because they're not a hairdresser, but they can check the experience and how it made them feel. And so you can't be strong technically and think that's enough. That's where the whole thing comes into play. The mental toughness, I got this from Chris Doris. And Steve, I think you'd enjoy. I was reading through some things yesterday. He said, mental toughness is getting things done efficiently and feel amazing while doing it. And he's written some beautiful articles, and I wanted to give him credit for this because it's the articles that support this. It's not anything you haven't heard before, but the way he presents it is really good. You know, the people that are at peak performance mentally is their mental state is strong and they're in a remarkable mood. You know, I think about when they're kind of in the zone. Remember when Michael made, I think, 6 threes in the first half of a game and he couldn't miss and he came by and he just shrugged his shoulders like, no, I'm in the zone and everything's going in. The mood behind the face, he was having a great time that day, playing basketball and everything was going well. And what he says in his article, which is what I really loved, is some wait for great results before they will let themselves feel the mastery or peak performance mentally. They have a defeated mood. They're waiting to be in a good mood until everything's in place versus the mood will create the results. Don't you love that? I mean, so he says, let the state of mind propel them into the results they want. Confident, prepared. They're deserving of this because of the work they put in. They're masterful. They've created the mastery of the role. They put the game face on before they act. They even have the game face on before they have the results. And the results then come as an outcome of these things being in place. How many people, I'm not busy, so they're defeated and they're sad. So their mood is in the way of them being able to create excitement.
Yeah.
So we see that. We see that in schools when the kids are going through school. At first, they're so excited, right? And then...
Well, and I think about that. I've just been in a conversation with a dear friend of mine who has a nephew who I'm going to be seeing this weekend, who spent 16 years of his life preparing to be a surgeon. 16 years after high school to wind up a year from now finally being a surgeon. And in residency, the hours, for example, this person regularly works 15, 16-hour days. And
he just got married.
Goes days without a day off,
or
goes months without a day off. And you think, okay, if that was the standard for hairdressers, how many hairdressers would we have? Or how many wouldn't we have? Or do they dictate in that field mastery?
Mandated.
Yeah, they mandate it.
Absolutely.
Mastery has to be there. And I just think it's...
And if you're not tough enough?
You go by the wayside.
Exactly right.
Yeah, we see it on TV shows, but it happens in real life as well. And so when you look at this and say, okay, I love the fact that masterful is on here, but Seth Godin says that mastery happens in 10,000 hours of practice. So 10,000 hours, almost 5 years.
Well, in his 16 years, he's done 10,000 hours.
Oh yeah,
right?
in many different things.
Absolutely.
And so you look and say, okay, and why this is top of mind is again, just hearing a hairdresser interviewed and having him say that he spent 10,000 hours in hair color. He spent 10,000 hours in cutting women's hair. He spent 10,000 hours in grooming men's hair. Mastery. I think that's incredible. And what this is, mood first. You could be miserable while you're in those 10,000 hours, or you could be all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
You could be excited, enthusiastic. On my way, I've got 1,000 hours, I've got 2,000, I've got 5,000. We see people in 1,500 hours. They talk about, just what it goes on. And I see the...
I met with a girl yesterday, and I said, what is taking so long to get through school? And she doesn't have the motivation. And it could be where she's going. I don't know. It's not our school. But what's taking so long? When were you supposed to graduate? November. Well, then when were you supposed to graduate? February. Well, now it's April and you're still not graduating. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And does she want to pull in that parking lot? Obviously not. Right? So you think, there's no game face there.
Right.
God bless you. Someone robbed you of it. But go get it back if you want it that bad.
Yeah.
Go back and get that. I sent Cole, our nephew plays ball, and I'm sure we've talked about that many times. And I'll send him pictures of him at 12 years old. Sometimes that game face is better than the one today. And I'll leave him a message with a picture of that 12-year-old boy and say, go back and get him. Go back and get him right now. And he'll write, yes, Auntie, right? But it's amazing how you can lose that,
mm-hmm.
right? And figure out why you shouldn't versus why you should. Pick 3 words. This is another thing Chris says. Pick 3 words that you put in the game face mode or the mood, right? And I just put 3 down. What's my effort going to be like? What's my energy going to be like? Where's my enthusiasm? And recite them over and over again. Those 3 words that will keep you. It's kind of, we've talked about show-up words in the past, but these are 3 words that are going to keep the mood where it needs to be. We had dinner at, or lunch. She took me to my favorite place to watch business, R&D.
Mm-hmm.
And we went last week. We had the trip from heck because of the planes being grounded for the 737s, and we were stuck. And he said, why don't I take you over to R&D? And once again, I have to tell you that leadership plays a big role in the game phase. Do you mandate a game phase or not? So I've talked about this restaurant before, and this is where it has an exposed kitchen. And, when I was growing up, the kitchen was, people were saying the F word, and people were screaming back there, shut up, you took my steak, give me this, blah. And they decided, we're going to have an open kitchen. It protects the behavior of everyone, because they can't talk like that if the kitchen is open. And they always have an expediter on the line that is controlling the energy and the flow of the business. And the expediter they had on that day wasn't that strong. I think she was smart. I was watching her very closely, but one time she said, okay, come on, people, let's go. And I thought, that wouldn't have fired me up. Remember I told you, she goes, come on, let's go. She was smart, but she didn't push that enthusiasm and energy onto anyone. What kind of coach is going to bring out the best in you? And what kind of coach do you need to be to bring out the best in your people? Fired up, let's go now.
Well, and again, leadership isn't about a title or a position. Leadership is about influence. And if you aren't getting the result that you want, it probably has to do with your focus and ability to influence others.
Well, and I think that's a great point. I'm into, right now, I record Say Yes to the Dress. And I don't watch all the stupid stories behind it. I don't care about that. I want to see the dress. I want to see the salesmanship. I want to see the daily powwow. And I love when they show the morning powwow with the staff. And they say, we have this kind of client coming in. We have this person coming in. We have a VIP coming in. And they start talking about who's assigned to things, because they don't know maybe ahead of time. And I know it's staged for TV, but anyway, what are our daily powwows like? We have VIPs coming in. We have top 10 customers come in. We have 3 of them coming in today. This is what we need to do. This is where we are. And I still don't think we are preparing the locker room. Our locker room, we don't do locker room, game ready face. They walk in the door and you're kind of hi, and we just start working versus creating that energy. And some people say, well, they have to be there 15 minutes early to set up the station. For what? For what? Just to make sure their shears are out? Start putting fire on that wood. Light the fire and start adding more fire to that wood immediately starting in the morning. And what happens if you're at a campfire and the fire's starting to go out? What does everyone say? Fire needs more wood. Your business needs more wood sometimes.
Well, I think of the phrase that I learned from Zig Ziglar, and it was, you can't stand in front of a wooden stove and say, give me heat and I'll give you wood. And it's the same thing. You can't stand in front of a campfire or a bonfire or any kind of a fire and say, you give me heat and I'll give you wood. You have to...
Wood first.
The wood has to be first, and it has to be constant.
And it has to be looked at, or stoke the fire, stoke the fire, stoke the fire. Stoke the fire with your people. I don't care if they're level 15 in your salon.
That's where it comes time to, when the guest is present and we're on stage, it's time to celebrate. It's time to have enthusiastic people passionate about what they do, serving the public with a servant's heart, and then recognizing it and having fun with it. Behind the scenes, we train. But in front of the guest, we have to celebrate.
Have to. Michael Jordan, I want to tell these 2 stories he said during his acceptance speech, and I loved it.
This one, I love when he does that.
Oh my God, he's so funny.
Freaks people out.
So, I guess was it Doc? Doc was one of his coaches too, wasn't he? That was under Phil. What was his name? Doc Rivers?
No, Tex.
Tex Rivers.
Not Tex.
No.
I don't remember Tex.
Okay, so anyway.
Tex is the one that invented the special offense.
Anyway, Michael said that he had a coach with the Bulls that was on him every second. Now, even if he had a 50-point game, he'd still criticize something in Michael's game that day. So they were down, and 8 minutes, or I don't know, they were down 8 points and close to being the end of the game, and Michael went into full Michael mode, right? So he's walking off, and the coach said, there's no I in team. And Michael said, but there is an I in win. And it made me laugh so hard the way he said it. And it's so true. Michael said, I was out to win. And I told that team, we're going to win tonight. And if I had to put it all on my shoulders, I did it. Mm-hmm. And so that was a good one. The other one was Michael had broken his ankle. I can't remember. And he was out 65 games. Do you remember this? This was early in his career. Mm-hmm. And they were coming back and he went to meet with the owner of the team, and he said, I've got to play. He got okay to play 7 minutes a half. That was it, 7 minutes a half. And he said, I can't do that. I've got to play. I've got to play. And so the owner said, Michael said, I'm practicing 2 hours a day, but you're only letting me play 14 minutes. Now, in Michael's world, it was no different because he was full out in practice, like he said. Some people might just be playing, but he said, I'm full out in practice. I'm practicing 2 hours a day, but you're only letting me play 14 minutes a game. I can't do it. And so the coach said to him, or the owner of the team said, if you had a headache and you had 10 pills, 9 of them were Tylenol, and the 10th one was cyanide, would you take it? Would you take the chance? And Michael said, well, how bad's the headache? Right? Because the Bulls were losing right then. So his point was, God, I have to protect this investment that we have in you. You're a lot. And if there's a 10% chance you can get hurt, I'm going to not do it, equivalent to the cyanide, right? And when Michael said, well, how bad's the headache? He said, you win. You win. I understand the point, because sometimes we hold back because of that 10% versus going with our gut, which is 90%. And most of the time, that 10% is our ability to lead and hold people accountable for these kind of performances we're talking about today. I was saying yesterday, every part of the salon needs to be honored. People don't get to pick and choose in our businesses. I used to call that playing house. People playing house with our business. This is the system we have. This is the investment we want. This is what we expect. No ifs, ands, and buts. And when if you would do that with how we cut hair, then you've got to do that with what you expect from them mentally. You have to. And even us, we will let things not be honored completely, and I'm not sure the reason why. I'm not sure. A restaurant's not going to let a steak that was ordered medium to go out rare and think there's not going to be a complaint on that, right? They're not going to let that. They said, this is ordered medium, we can't send it out rare. There's systems in place to catch those things. When someone is in a bad mood or a bad way, we've got to catch it and address it. Mm-hmm. And we have to say, look, we're not going to win today in this kind of situation. And taking things personal the way we started out today, that can all get in the way of becoming extraordinary. 99% of the dollars still spent in salons is to develop someone technically. And that's not where we're losing.
That's true. That's true. So
that's a good topic. I enjoyed that very much.
Very enjoyable topic.
I didn't do Michael Jordan's stories justice, but I always say, you say it too, if we weren't married to each other, we'd be married to Michael Jordan. Just to study how he thinks.
Mm-hmm. Well, now there's a new guy in town, Zion.
Well, that's a little young for me, I think.
You know what? I'm a personal moment. Just want to wish our friend and partner, John Paul DeJoria, a happy birthday tomorrow, April 13th. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Yes, sir. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. You have made a difference in our lives and the difference of many. And your game face, it's a good one.
You bet.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great month.
Bye.